Good evening, guys, and welcome out to Revolution. And so some of you may have heard that Pastor D.A. Waite has passed away. And so we're going to look at a little bit of the work that D.A. Waite did and the legacy that he's left behind. And so I'm just realizing I haven't really advertised this anywhere. So I might just jump onto my stream. And I'll just go to my Facebook page and specifically the Textus Receptus Academy. And usually I know my live podcasts in the evening don't attract that many people because apparently it's probably about 4 o'clock in the morning, I guess, in the United States, where most people who watch my videos reside. But I'm just going to post this around just for a sec, so just bear with me. But we're going to look at I better not talk and do this at the same time. I think that'll do for the moment. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this. So the Bible for today homepage, which is usually filled with information, Bible studies, things about the Textus Receptus King James Bible. It says Pastor D.A. Waite, December 8th, 1927 to May the 4th, 2024. Navy Lieutenant Chaplain D.A. Waite, ordained Baptist pastor, scholar holding both a PhD in speech and a THD in theology, Christian apologist and leader as well as Bible defender, passed away quietly into glory about 4:15 a.m. Saturday, May the 4th, 2024. Reverend Waite was born in Elyria, I guess that's Ohio, December the 8th, 1927, to Vigil Henry and Helen Pierce Waite. While in high school, he accepted Jesus Christ as his personal savior from sin. He never shied away from telling anyone how God brought him to himself one day in his high school's boiler room by a redeemed janitor, Uncle Charlie Allen. So this is a funeral at Boyce Funeral Home. So that's the address there. And that is happening on Thursday, the 9th of May, 11:30 to 12:30 with a funeral service to follow. And so I guess they're having a memorial service there. So I just sort of bring that to your attention because a lot of people don't know who D.A. Waite is. And I guess in the last, say, 15 years, people would have jumped onto YouTube, and so this is D.A. Waite's. I think this is his personal one. Maybe it was set up by his wife or someone, a member of the family, but even then, it's like 5 years old. And yeah, D.A. Waite was in his 90s when he passed away. So, he was getting on. This is his son, who's also. I think his initials are also D.A. Waite. And he's like in his 70s, I think, even. Might be late 60s, early 70s. And so even his children were older, in a sense, where they were considered seniors. Now, what I want to do is I just want to read through some stuff about D.A. Waite. And so I might actually even just get the name up. We'll do a quick Google image search. There's going to be some weird things there, but maybe I'll type in D.A. Waite, KJB, I guess he would call it, King James Bible. Yeah. And so Mark Ward's head pops up in there, But I'm just going to read this. D.A. Waite, also see the Dean Burgon Society. So D.A. Waite is was the head of the Dean Burgon Society. And so this article is written, I guess, let me just look at the date of this. This was written in 1995. So this is the third edition, 2002. So D.A. Waite, and so I'm going to be saying it in the present tense, so just excuse that, is a Baptist scholar and a man who has written in the defense of the received text and the King James Bible since 1971. D.A. Waite has 118 semester hours, that's 1,888 class hours of training in the biblical and other foreign languages, plus countless hours of teaching and personal research in the use of these languages. He obtained a BA in Classical Greek and Latin from the University of Michigan in 1948, a THM with honors in New Testament Greek literature and exegesis from Dallas Theological Seminary in 1952, an MA in speech from Southern Methodist University in 1953, a THD with honors in Bible exposition from Dallas Theological Seminary in 1955, and a PhD in speech from Purdue University in 1961. He holds both New Jersey and Pennsylvania teacher certificates in Greek and language arts. He's taught Greek, Hebrew, Bible, speech, and English for over 35 years in 9 schools. So that's 2002, or I guess it might even be 1995 when this is written. So anyway, D.A. Waite founded the Bible for Today, the BFT ministry, in 1971, the year he published his first book on the subject of Bible versions. He has produced over 700 studies, booklets, cassettes, VCRs that he distributes through Bible for Today, along with hundreds of titles by other men on a wide variety of subjects. As we have seen, some pretend that today's King James defenders are intellectual pygmies and crackpots who merely parrot things they have received from someone else. Such a view is far from the truth. Dr. Waite, for example, has produced a number of exacting studies in the field of Bible versions. I can understand how someone might disagree with the King James defenders' conclusions, but to gloss over or ignore entirely the diligent research behind the positions of men such as this, and to pretend that they could not possibly be true scholars, is a farce. To find out for himself the exact number and nature of changes that have been made in the critical text, Waite went through the Westcott and Hort text and compared it with the received text. He counted every single word difference and weighed the significance. When Waite says there are 9,970 Greek words either added, subtracted, or changed from the TR in the Westcott and Hort text, he's not merely parroting what he read somewhere. He has done this with at least 3 of the modern English versions, that in the New American Standard Version, New International Version, and the New King James Version, comparing them word for word with the King James Bible and the received text, noting the number and significance of the differences. He's also published the results of these studies. I repeat, it is one thing to disagree with Dr. Waite's conclusions. It is quite another thing to pretend that he and others like him are some sort of crackpot cultists. The following is from a testimony that Dr. Waite graciously recorded for us on an audio cassette in January 1992. So this is a long time ago. And so what you got to understand is D.A. Waite was basically one of the main leaders of what would be called, King James defense. It usually gets labeled King James only, even though most people don't like the term King James only. People would more refer to, Ruckman, Riplinger, Gipp as King James only, in a sense where they're going to the English King James only. They're not going to the Textus Receptus. So oftentimes D.A. Waite would say, I'm going to the Textus Receptus, I'm going to the Hebrew, I'm going to these languages, so I can't be classed as a King James only in the style of Peter Ruckman, like James White would do in his King James only controversy book. So he wrote in 1992. So this is an article by David Cloud in his For Love of the Bible. So he said, for about 20 years, I was in darkness about this issue. I knew almost nothing of it, roughly 1951 to 1971. I was at Dallas Theological Seminary from 1948 to 1952. That was my Master of Theology. When I stayed an extra year, 1953, throughout these years, we were simply told to use the Westcott and Hort Greek New Testament, which we did in the Greek classes. It was the actual text Westcott and Hort developed. It was not simply another text, the Nestle text or the Sauter text, but it was the Westcott and Hort. And I didn't know there was any other Greek text. I majored in classical Greek and Latin at the University of Michigan, 1945 to 1948. I took 3 years. I took 3 years to get my 4 years of work. I went summer and winter so that I could marry my wife, Mrs. Waite. Then I came to Dallas Seminary. I was learning New Testament Greek, and I didn't pay much heed to the text. I didn't care. I just wanted to learn the forms and get good grades, which I did. But I did not examine the textual base that we were using. I just assumed that was the only one to use. I've always read from the King James Bible. I always preach from the King James Bible. I've always studied from the King James Bible. I've never used any other Bible, even though at Dallas Theological Seminary, they requested that we use the American Standard Version of 1901. The ASV, the ASV, I never used it. I looked at it a couple of times. I bought a copy and still have a copy of it. But the teachers there, Dr. J. Elwood Evans, and the practical theological department, the preaching department, and others said that that's the most accurate version there is in English. Much more accurate than the King James Bible. They didn't say why, but I believe the reason why is that it conforms to the Westcott and Hort Greek text. It adds words that the Westcott and Hort adds, and it subtracts words that the Westcott and Hort subtracts. It changes words that the Westcott and Hort changes. This then was the reason. Crossing out verses in the Schofield Bible. I guess I was too stupid to understand it, too thick or something, but I didn't change. I kept going with the King James Bible. I used the old Schofield 1917 edition, and I was so committed to the excellence of the Schofield Reference Bible and their wisdom that every time editors suggested a change in the Greek and a change in the English translation of that text, I went along with it. I accepted it. This is now roughly from 1951 to 1971. Actually, this dates from when I became a Christian. I was saved in 1944. I had no doubts about the notes, but after having learned the truth of the Textus Receptus and the value of it, I noticed in the preface of the Schofield Reference Bible that Dr. Schofield prefers the B and Aleph, the Vatican and Sinai manuscripts. He says that these are the more up-to-date manuscripts, and they are really the ones to follow, and they really are better manuscripts than the King James Bible translators used. Now, I might actually get a pen here because there's a huge chunk of writing, and I noticed that for this reason, he makes these notes in the margin. Now, he says that he's not going to use any other version except for the King James Version. because the King James Version is the one that is accepted by the people today. You remember that quotation in the preface of the old Schofield Bible? But I was so enamored with his editorial development and editorial comment that every time they suggested a change, I would pencil out any words that they said did not belong in the text. In fact, even in the Bible that I still have, that my wife gave to me in 1947, before we were married in 1948, these are penciled out. How's that? He was going through and scrubbing out these words, saying, well, Schofield says that they shouldn't be in there. For example, in 1 Corinthians 11:23, where it says, this is my body which is broken for you, the marginal reference says, which is for you. They take out broken. So in my own copy of the Bible, the old Schofield Bible, I guess it's called Schofield, not Schofield, Schofield Bible, I have penciled out the word broken. And so I've done throughout all the changes they suggest in the margin. This shows how committed I was to following what these people said, who were committed totally to the Westcott and Hort Greek text. How I came to understand the issue. You ask the question then, how I came to understand the Bible version issue. I guess the first thing I read about or knew about, my mother-in-law to be, Miss Gertrude Grace Sanborn, gave me a book, God Wrote Only One Bible. I think I've actually got that. Yeah, wow, right there. I might actually enlarge in this, because I do kind of collect these old books whenever I see them. Yeah, so that's a classic. So that's actually a 1980 copy by Jasper James Ray. And so it says it was originally in 1955. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. Going through all the bits and pieces in there. I can't really remember what it's like, but anyway, D.A. Waite had that. So let's go back to this view. I didn't say or think too much about it. I didn't study it at the time, but that was my first introduction. Then, as I was teaching as professor of Greek at Sheldon College in Cape May, New Jersey, I had one of my pupils, Sandra Phillips, I think her name was then. She was married to Bill DeVos, also one of my Greek students and speech students that I taught at Sheldon College. Sandy said there is a book in her library at Shelton by Dean John William Burgon that defends not only the King James Bible, but also the Greek text, the received text that underlies that Bible. Have you ever seen that book, Dr. Waite? She asked me. I said, well, no, I haven't. I think I might have looked at it. I might have glanced at it. I thought to myself, here is an interesting thing. Here is a book that I haven't seen that says there is a difference in the Greek text that the modern versions are using, and that the King James text that underlies it, the Textus Receptus, is superior to the Westcott and Hort text type and to the critical text. Then about that time, I think it was 1969 or 1970, along in there, Dr. Fuller came out with his book, Which Bible? I think I might have that one too. I've got Which Bible Can We Trust? So that is by Les Garrett. And so, it's got a picture of Dr. Fuller in there. So it must be, the forward is by Fuller. So anyway, it looks like another type of book like that. Got some of these old classic books. Also, I looked at least one of the books by Dr. Edward F. Hill's Believing Bible Study. I don't think I saw at that time the other book, the King James Bible Defended. So in 1971, having read these various books, I was deeply convicted and convinced that the King James Bible and the Greek that underlies it, as well as the Hebrew text, although I got into the Hebrew text a little bit later, but I was convinced that the Greek text that underlies the New Testament of the King James Bible was the accurate text to use. Writing my first book on the subject. Thus, I wrote my first paper on this thing. It was 1971. I combined, you might say, just trying to get a digest of these three books. God Wrote Only One Bible by Jasper James Ray, Which Bible? Edited by Dr. David Otis Fuller, who was a good friend of mine at the time and was until the day of his death, and Believing Bible Study by Dr. Edward F. Hills. The 1971 book was called The Case for the Received Text of the Hebrew and Greek Underlying the King James Version, a summary of the evidence and argument. This was the book that I put out first in 1971. You can say the first 20 years, from 1951 to 1971, I was in somewhat of a daze, somewhat of a darkness concerning the issues. Then from 1971 to 1991, 20 more years, I've been writing, I've been studying, I've been preaching, I've been teaching, I've been debating, I've been arguing, I've been talking about, I've been preaching from, and I've continued to memorize from and believe the King James Bible and the text that underlies that Bible. For 20 years, I've been a stalwart defender of that book. I've studiously stayed away from the extreme position, however, of Dr. Peter Ruckman. I believe that position is heresy. That position, in effect, says that the King James Bible is not a translation, but is direct Holy Spirit revelation, coming word for word, including the italics, from God in 1611. I believe that position is heresy. I believe that is adding revelation to the word of God, where he said the canon was closed. I believe to say that God supplanted and threw away the Hebrew and Greek that he gave us originally, and now he has given us a special word-for-word revelation in the English language called the King James Bible. I believe that is heresy. But I do believe in the superiority of the King James Bible. I believe it is God's word kept intact in English. I hold it up proudly and say it is the word of God in English. Our Dean Burgon Society does as well, and we strongly support it. Bible for Today. The Bible for Today ministry in Collingswood, New Jersey, which began in extensive fashion in 1971, has paralleled the development of this whole theme of the superiority of the King James Bible and the Textus Receptus and the version issue. In 1971, we saw the light on that issue, and in 1971, we also began the Bible for Today ministry in a more extensive way. We have more than 2,100 titles that we carry. Of those 2,100, about 785 titles are concerning the defense of the King James Bible, both on video cassette recordings and audio recordings, on books, booklets, not only that I have written, but that others have written. So the Bible for Today has become a very important arm of this entire ministry. The Dean Burgon Society. Since 1978, I have been the president of the Dean Burgon Society. That society has a motto: in defense of traditional Bible text. This refers to the traditional Masoretic Hebrew Old Testament text that underlies our King James Bible, the traditional Greek New Testament received text, and the King James Bible itself, which is the traditional English Bible. We have over 10 or 11 small booklets on various issues and subjects that deal with this issue, with this Bible version issue. We publish them under the Dean Burgon Society title, and we continue to stand for this in the Dean Burgon Society. So then it has publishing out of print titles. The Bible for Today is a publishing organization as well as carrying books from other publishers. One of the things we want to see more than anything else are works that are defending our King James Bible, the received Greek text and the Masoretic traditional Hebrew text as well. We have reprinted old books that are now out of print. Some of these are the authorized version of 1611, the History and Changes in it by Scrivener. We have reprinted all 5 of Dean John William Burgon's books on Bible texts, causes and corruption of the traditional text, the traditional text itself, revision revised, the last 12 verses of Mark, and inspiration and interpretation. There are about 2,000 pages we have reprinted in full with the original pagination and editions. At first, we did it in a humble way by photocopy machine method in 8.5 by 11-inch format, spiral bound. During the last few years, we have published all of Burgon's books in lovely hardcover editions. Then we have reprinted Codex B and its allies, a study and an indictment. This is 924 pages, 2 volumes by Herman Hoskier. In this, he compares B and Aleph and Vaticanus and Sinaiticus and says that in over 3,000 places they contradict one another in the Gospels alone. That is an important one. We've reprinted Dean John William Burgon's biography by Goulburn. This is 801 large pages, 2 volumes. We reprinted the English version text is unauthorized by G.W. Sampson. We've reprinted Edward Miller's Guide to Textual Criticism of the New Testament. That's the Edward Miller that was the understudy of Dean Burgon. We've reprinted Frederick Nolan's Inquiry into the Integrity of the Greek Vulgate, or the Textus Receptus. We've reprinted Eben Hort's Introduction to the Greek Text, even though we disagree with it. An erroneous study, we call it. It is 530 pages. It has been out of print for a long while, and Dean Burgon's revision revised refuted this study, so we wanted to make it available for those who wanted to see exactly what Hort had written. Then we have reprinted Alexander McClure's King James Translators Revived biographical notes. This was written over 100 years ago. We have reprinted Wilkinson's Our Authorized Bible Vindicated. We've also reprinted Scrivener's Plain Introduction to the Criticism of the New Testament. This is 920 pages, 2 volumes. We've also reprinted Scrivener's Greek New Testament, the Textus Receptus, and the Westcott and Hort text in 1 edition, with the Westcott and Hort text in boldface. We've reprinted Spurgeon's quotations against the English Revised Version of 1881. Okay, that's interesting because I think it was Elijah Hixson wrote that Spurgeon was in favor of that. But I guess I'll leave that to other people to figure that one out. Then we have reprinted textual commentary on Matthew 1 to 14 by Edward Miller. This is 141 pages. We have therefore reprinted many things on this issue of the version issue. Computer studies on the new versions. I think one of the most important publications that we've made recently on the version issue has been the documented computer printout studies of the perversions of the New King James Version. We have over 2,000 examples of perversion and paraphrase in the New King James. There is also the study that we have made of the New American Standard Version, where we have shown over 4,000 examples of perversion and paraphrase. And there is the study of the New International Version, where we have shown 6,653 examples of perversion and paraphrase. All three of these, to a lesser or greater extent, have used perversion, paraphrase, and dynamic equivalency, and we believe there are three ways this has been done. They have added to the words of God, they have subtracted from the words of God, and they have changed the words of God, and we believe they are theologically in error as well. Also, in our reprinting faculties, we have reprinted 5 excellent books by Pastor Jack Mormon. Brother Mormon is an excellent scholar and student of this whole issue. He's one of the members of the executive committee of the Dean Burgon Society. He's in England now as a missionary. He has written 5 books, as we have said, and excellent books at that. They are Coney's Brass and Easter, King James Bible Problems Answered, Early Manuscripts and the Authorized Version, A Closer Look, Forever Settled, Bible Documents and History Survey, the Hodges and Farsted's so-called majority text refuted by evidence, Missing in Modern Bibles, Early Manuscripts takes up over 356 doctrinal passages that are affected by the Greek text of Westcott and Hort, and Nestle Alarm 26 edition. Forever Settled was recently published in a hardcover edition. We believe that the Lord is honoring this defense of the King James Bible. It is just like hitting a nail with a hammer. You hit it and you concentrate on it and you keep hitting it, and pretty soon the nail begins to travel into the wood. And I believe with this little Johnny one note, hitting and drumming and pounding, not only in the Bible for Today ministry, but also in our Dean Burgon Society ministry and our radio ministry, we believe this will give us results. And it has given us results. We believe many are waking up to this matter. These things have encouraged us and give me to understand that there is a movement of change and of opposition to the new versions and perversions in this country. I believe we can do it on a respectful basis. I believe we can do it on a logical and fundamental basis without being wild and fanatical. We're forceful, we're emotional about it. I am positive that I'm right about it. I have no doubts about it. But we can do it in a kind of fashion without using a lot of adjectives, which are almost like swear words, as Dr. Ruckman himself gets into many times. We can do it in a forceful manner and yet respectful manner, using the King's English persuasively to persuade others that the King James Bible is the Word of God in English and should be used in every area of our church, of our school life, of our college life, of our printing life, of our publishing life, of our memorizing life, and of our practicing life. My background of Master of Theology at Dallas Seminary has been helpful. I majored in New Testament Greek literature and exegesis. I took many hours of electives in that language as well. I took 2 years of Hebrew at Dallas Seminary in my Master of Theology as well. Then I took another year and a half in the Doctor of Theology level. This background that I have as a trained person in these languages, I believe has helped me greatly in being able to see the different text in Hebrew and Greek. Though I do not try to flaunt the language of these subjects, yet I do believe that the study of these languages, though I don't say that is the only way you have to go, has made me more equipped than ever in the battle for the King James Bible that I love. I praise God for the training and for the background and for the ministry God has given to me in the Bible for Today and in the Dean Burgon Society. So that's the end of what Dr. Waite has said. In 1992, Dr. Waite published Defending the King James Bible, a Fourfold Superiority, This is a 307-page book, so I've got that one right there. 307-page book is the best one booklet on the subject in the estimation of this author. So this is David Cloud. Waite presents a fourfold superiority of the King James Bible over the modern versions. It is based upon superior text. It has superior translators. It incorporated a superior translation technique, and it has a superior theology. Okay, so that's the end of that. So there's quite a lot that's written there, and I did look up D.A. Waite in this book, and he appears over and over and over again. So let me just grab this book here. So this is David Cloud, For Love of the Bible. This is basically sort of like a history of the Battle of the King James and the received text from 1800 to present. So it goes through quite a lot of people who I've never really even heard of, but sort of starts off in 1883, the revision revised. So it goes through some Dean John William Burgon's material, goes on through Hills, etc. And the last one there is Defending the King James Bible. So that is this one here by D.A. Waite. And David Cloud says that this is the best book on the topic. So having written this book in 1995, I would say at the time, this probably was the best book on the topic. And so it's got the biographical information of Waite there. There's a lot of really interesting, good material here. Now, I understand that over the years, these type of things, we develop better argumentation, and that's fine. I hope that the things that I'm saying on the internet, like people in 5-10 years run with it and have better argumentation and can say it better and can add a few different facts here and there. But the vast majority of this is very, very sound. Now, one of the how did I get introduced to D.A. Waite's material? It was through a guy called Joseph Chambers. So I'll just get Joseph Chambers up here. So Joseph Chambers is still alive. Okay, Joseph Chambers. Maybe I'll type in Ankerberg show. It might come up. Okay, so here's a Wikipedia article with Joseph Chambers on it. So that's good. So this is Joseph Chambers, and that's how I remember him in the 90s. like full grey hair and everything like that. He was sort of like an older guy back then. So he's in his 90s as well. Now, I remember I started listening to Joe Chambers because he was coming against Benny Hinn, Kenneth Hagin, and I've got tons of his videos here where he's got like Kenneth Hagin and the Spirit of the Serpent by Joe Chambers, and lots of videos. Benny Hinn is possessed by devils. And so, yeah, really, back in those days, it was like this stuff was gold, to get a VHS thing on Pensacola, and he's exposing the whole thing, and the false anointing, the counterfeit anointing has invaded the church. And so he had lots and lots of videos on this. So I used to get all these videos, and then I started to get his newsletter, and I saw in his newsletter he was advertising the Defending the King James Bible book by D.A. Waite. And so I began to get some of this material, and I noticed that he was bringing out a weekly 2-hour audio program. So it would go for 2 hours, and it would basically just say that it would be a topic like, is the Antichrist going to be a homosexual, or is the NIV Bible, satanic? And so, I was interested in all this, and so I saw that he had an 8-hour course on the King James Bible, and so I thought, well, I'll jump into this, and so I grabbed the 8-hour course. It was in cassettes. I've still got these cassettes. I've got like 500 of Joseph Chambers' cassettes. Lots of his preaching, and also lots of his apologetics ministry for his, I think it's called the Bible Hour or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is. It might even say it down here. Anyway, so yeah, I had his 2-hour things, and so he invited D.A. Waite onto his program, and they talked about the King James issue. And one of the main things was, I thought the Septuagint was a bit of a spanner in the works for these received text guys, these King James guys, because if Jesus is quoting from a Greek Bible that has errors in it, what's the problem with these modern versions? That was the argument that I was hearing. But then D.A. Waite was like, well, we're not really sure if this was around at the time of Jesus, or if there's a lot of myth around it. They say Jesus used it. They say the apostles used it. And so he went through a lot of these things, and it just sparked me to go and do some research into it. And at the time, the internet was really young. And so I'd search for things, and I remember I found an article by a guy called Floyd Jones. And so I read through his material. It was very interesting. Then I found Scott Jones and Will Kinney, and these were on old Bible forums back in like 2001 to 2003. And we were chatting about this sort of stuff on these Bible forums. And at the time, I was a New King James guy. I was reading the New King James, and the whole issue of the New King James having, these huge problems, it wasn't really something that I'd looked at it, but I hadn't really believed it. I had this fold out because I was getting most of the stuff from Joe Chambers, and so he actually promoted some of Riplinger's stuff, and I got this book, which I'll talk about a bit later, The Language of the King James Bible. But what I found was whenever I got Riplinger's stuff, had a big fold-out thing of all the changes in the New King James, I just felt like a lot of it wasn't really. It was sort of saying it's omitting words, like changing the words from devils to demons, and I'm like, yeah, it's sort of like a modernization of the word devils. I just didn't see that it was such a huge deal. But then there were other tiny little things where it was changing son to servant, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually a big deal. So there were these sort of doubts in me, but at the time I just thought, well, every Bible's got mistakes. The King James has mistakes, so does the New King James, and the originals, and I'm only a Christian for 5 years or whatever at the time. So it took me a while to sort of get my head around all these issues. But so anyway, that's how I was introduced to D.A. Waite's material. And so after that, I started searching for his material. And a lot of it, thankfully, was put online. And over the years, I have hard drives still filled with D.A. Waite's material, the Dean Burgon Society. I can't even remember where I'm getting these from. But I guess it was like sermon audio. They've been around for such a long time. I was just downloading all the stuff from the Dean Burgon Society, all the stuff from D.A. Waite, because he was sort of like the first introduction to stuff that was really scholarly on the King James issue, and that helped a lot as well. But then you run into people who are very critical of D.A. Waite, saying that, he's sort of got a bit of a majority text position and all this sort of stuff. And so anyway, that's how, Open Bible Dialogue is the, that was a 2-hour program that I used to listen to. So anyway, we'll just jump back here. So even just on a Google search, typing in D.A. Waite and KJB, you can see how many books, Burgon's warnings on revision, The Case for the King James Bible, a summary of the evidence and argument by D.A. Waite. The Superior Foundation of the King James Bible. The so-called Bible-believing people are in serious error using translations other than the 1611 King James Bible. It's got Westcott and Hort there. Case for the King James Bible again. 4,114 definitions from the defined King James Bible. So one thing that D.A. Waite did with his son was they worked on the defined King James Bible. So I'll just open that. And so if you want any of these type of books, you can go to the Old Paths publications. Okay, so now I was sort of in a way lucky enough to be approached to have a book in here. So I've got my own little book here. So I'll just say this. Here we go, Revelation 16:5. So they do sell my book there. But they have books, by Phil Stringer, a whole bunch of them, Thomas Strauss, and when you go to D.A. Waite, it's like tons and tons and tons of books, heaps of books. So, if you want to have a look at those, that's on the Old Paths publications. So, getting back to the defined King James Version, so we'll see if he's got a bit of a sample. Sometimes he has a sample. Maybe I'll crack it open in Barnes and Noble, and we'll see if we can get a sample there. Not really, but this is the one that basically has in the margin, like for archaic terminology and words, it has a basic sort of dictionary meaning. And so it's a bit of a guide when you're reading along. If you're stumbling across an old word, you can check that out. And so, so that's the defined King James Bible. So it's basically just the King James Bible with notes. And I think the Trinitarian Bible Society brought one out. I can't remember exactly what it's called, the Westminster something. But there's a leather one. And we'll see if there's any other pictures of that. Yeah, we can look inside of it here. So you can see they've got things highlighted, numbered. But what went you out for to see? So that's got 1C there, and it has that is 2C. What went you out to see? So it has 4 to see, but it just means to see. A man clothed in soft raiment, number 2 there. Archaic for clothing, attire, apparel, dress. So some of these are very accurate, and you would have no problems with them. People have gone over some of these with a fine tooth comb and found some problems where they don't think it matches up, and I guess like people like myself who are studying through some of these words, like a lot of I've done a study on Easter. I'm pretty sure it actually has like this is a pagan festival or something like that written there. So, but this it's an interesting book, and actually it has Acts here. No, that's Acts 20. I thought it was 12 because I saw Passover down here. But anyway, so that's something that D.A. Waite worked on. So when people said, well, I can't read the King James Bible, well, all you had to do was get the defined King James Bible, and you wouldn't really have a problem reading it. So I might even crack this one open. I'll just see if it's copyrighted. Goes for 17 minutes, so I don't think I watched the whole thing. And that's 9 years ago. But we'll just jump in the middle there for a second.
definitions appear in the footnotes at the bottom of each page. The text of the King James remains unchanged. Bold type, like this, is used to highlight every word or phrase that is defined in the footnotes. Word definition as archaic or obsolete or rare, I list the appropriate abbreviation before that definition.
And so, Mark Ward comes along and goes, I'm showing people where there's words that have different meanings, etc. Well, we're all just looking at Mark Ward going, he's almost making an announcement going, there's archaic words, there's these false friends, and he's sort of redefined a few things to make it sound like it's a new thing. Well, people have been going through this for a long time. The Trinitarian Bible Society have a Bible word list, and I'm pretty sure they even have their own edition now. Lawrence M. Vance, he has an archaic words list. I mean, it was very common for people to have these type of lists, either on their computer, or I think I've got a Trinitarian Bible Society little booklet that I've had for like 20 years that just has, some definitions. And so, Mark Ward turns up and he's like, these archaic words, what are they going to do about it? And it's like, well, people have been working on this for a long time. And so, anyway, I'll pull out of those. But as you can see, so many things written about D.A. Waite. Very interesting. So I might just go through some of these comments. We've got a few people chatting, mostly Pastor Brett, it looks like, saying good morning. Well, good morning to you, Pastor Brett. Peter Ruckman often referred to D.A. Waite in his sermons. I have not read any of D.A. Waite's material. Yeah, and also D.A. Waite would mention Peter Ruckman sort of as someone who he would get labeled as a Ruckmanite. James White seemed to throw everyone into the same category. On one side of James White's mouth, he would say, well, there's a difference between D.A. Waite and Ruckman. But then on the other side of his mouth, he's saying, well, they're all King James only. And I think he mentioned D.A. Waite in his book like 15 times, but Ruckman only like 10 times. So, D.A. Waite was the one that he was really coming after. Pastor Brett said, I would actually love to see a debate between you and James White. Yeah, I'd love to do that. I have offered to debate James White, but he has basically said no. But I've known that he has said no to certain people over the years. Then all of a sudden he says yes. It just takes the right person to approach him and say, hey, do you want to debate this guy? And so that would be great. I'd love to debate James White. Question, I have a copy of the KJV 2023. Will you be doing the Old Testament? Yes, so I've done Psalms and Proverbs. I just need to go through and double check a lot of things with that. But I'm pretty sure this year I'll be bringing out the Psalms and Proverbs as well, attaching it on with the New Testament that's already out. And I've done a lot of the minor prophets as well. So I am going through that. I've had a bit of a break from it just because I enjoyed doing the update, but I actually really just have despised doing the, turning everything into a Word document, then into PDF, and then trying to upload it and onto Amazon. That was just a nightmare. And I ended up not going with Amazon because I had put it in public domain. And because it was a public domain book, they wanted me to get permission from the person who put it into public domain, which was myself. So I wrote a letter saying I give myself permission, and they were saying, no, it's not good enough. You can't give yourself permission. And so they really wanted me to get a lawyer involved. And it was like, and so after that, I'm not going to put anything in public domain anymore. I'm going to copyright it or else you have no control over it. So I didn't realize that. And so I'm just like blindly sort of going along, going, well, at public domain, everyone will they can have access to it. And, but what I've found is, it actually restricts you with printing and things like that. So yes, I will be working on the Old Testament, and I was answering some emails yesterday, and people are asking the same question. And so yes, I will be working on that more and more. I think you did an excellent job of updating without changing the meaning. Yeah, and so I grew up reading the New King James. And then I saw all the problems with it. And so I have, for many years, been collecting Textus Receptus editions, the King James Version 2000, the modern King James Version of J. Ray, I think his name is, and not J. Ray, Green, J. Green. Yeah, I've got quite a few here. Textus Receptus editions. This is the KJV 2000 edition. And so I remember getting this like in, I think it was 2002 or something. I was over in the Philippines and I saw a heap very cheap. And so I grabbed them and gave some to my friends. And at the time I was a New King James guy. So I compared them and went through it. I just saw there were some places which I was like, no, I don't agree with that. But they, in other places, they had better readings. They were closer to the King James. And so even just using that, it was very helpful. The modern King James version of Green was very helpful. This interlinear Greek English, this is falling to bits now, but this has the Greek in it. It has a full interlinear with the Strong's numbers, and it also has the Green's literal translation, which is basically like the modern King James version that he brought out, and it has the King James version on the other side, so you can compare those two. So I've gone through this over and over and over the years, and just trying to look at any others. I mean, of course, like the New King James, going through that. But what I did is I went through like websites like KJV Today, Will Kinney's material, and just looked for any, like if I was going through Matthew, I'd look for Matthew 4 and just look for anything on Matthew 4. And so I'd also go through other modern Bibles and look at what they're saying and why there was changes, and just making sure that I wasn't making the same type of errors that they had, like in the New King James or these other ones. So I think having those type of restrictions have really helped me to formulate a text that is very close to the King James. And so, and one of the main reasons that I was working on it was because when we started to do the Khmer Bible into Cambodian, the pastor there, now he didn't speak Greek. He was a very smart guy. He was multilingual, but he spoke English. He was our translator while we were there. And it was just the hand of God. I didn't mention anything about Bible translation or anything like that. And he actually mentioned it to me and said that the Bible, the main Bible that's here in Cambodia, is like an NIV type of Bible. And they actually have a different name for Jesus. And it's the Catholic name for Jesus. It's not the Protestant name for Jesus. And he said, it's really hard to hand these Bibles out because people think you're a Catholic. And so I'm just there listening to this at the table going, this guy has no idea that, I'm involved deeply with, TR issues and King James issues. And so after a while, I got in contact with him. I said, do you want to work on a Cambodian Bible? And so he did the New Testament, then he did the Old Testament, and he turned it into audio. And so, but what I found was we were constantly going back and forward talking about things that he wouldn't understand the archaic words in the King James because he's Cambodian, but he can speak English fluently, but there was just some archaic things there. And so what I found that I was doing was I was sort of getting the New King James and amending it and then sending it to him. And so after a while, I was constantly doing that. And so that's how the 2016 edition sort of came about. And then people were saying, well, we want this edition, so the 2023 edition came out last year. Did you exactly what Mark Ward claims to be arguing in favor of sorry, you did exactly what Mark Ward claims to be arguing in favor of. I do not think Mark would accept your work as finished. Mark claims to have been King James Version only, but now he uses the ESV as his main text. I just find Mark Ward is completely disingenuous. I think he just has an agenda to get people away from the King James, but he cloaks that in concern for his brothers who just see archaic words and stumble over them. And so I still read the Old King James. I haven't even gravitated towards my Bible because I don't think I really have a problem reading the Old King James. And I'm not pushing people to do a replacement. The main reason I did my version was so that translators could easily just go through and translate my edition into their edition and create what William Carey called a starter edition. So it's basically a draft edition, and then they can go through and study, use that as a draft, go through and study and use the Greek and the Hebrew and other tools that they've got, looking at the King James as well and making sure that it's 100%. So some people have said, I can't read the King James. It's too hard. I'm like, well, read this one. It's very easy to read. And so that way there's just no excuse for anyone becoming at least having a TR edition, because that they can't. The main thing is, the readability, so it's like, okay, here's one that's readable. And people are just sort of like, well, I don't really want to read that. And so a lot of the time it's not to do with readability. It's to do with they think that the text is completely inferior. So Brett asks, have you spoken to Mark Ward face to face? We used to chat on Facebook, but then I did a little bit of an article on Facebook with his picture there saying that I don't think he's very genuine in what he's saying. I think, because back then he was like, no, we can't argue about the text at all. We have to talk about readability. And nearly everyone was like, well, we're talking about the text, and so he would say, well, I'm not talking about the text. And it was just like he just wanted to create his own parameters. And from what I can really understand, I don't think he knew much about the critical text issues, the differences between the critical text and the Textus Receptus. And so I think he just wasn't equipped back then. Now I think he sort of can, fight his way out of those sort of arguments, sort of thing. He knows a bit about it. Not saying that he wins those arguments, but he looks like he's putting up a fight. But just knowing about these issues for quite a long time, you can sort of tell when someone's a bit green behind the ears and they're sort of pretending that they know quite a lot. Usually they just sort of try and stay away from argumentation that is a way over their head. But he was sort of making out that he could go there, but he doesn't want to. He just wants to talk about the readability. And then all of a sudden he's going there, and all this sort of stuff. But I just find Mark Ward is quite disingenuous. But I did, when he brought out his KJV Parallel Bible, the KJV Parallel Bible online, he was asking people on Facebook, can you help with this? He was asking King James people, can you help with this and show me where there's differences? So I just said, look, because he was saying he'd already done all this hard work. And I said, look, I'll go through like Matthew 1. And if there is too many places where you haven't shown there's issues, I'm not going to continue on further. So I showed him where there was 4 issues. Okay. And this was the Genesis reading in Matthew 1:1, which was inadvertently changed because of Matthew 1:18. And the Westcott and Hort text has Genesis there, the exact same word, where we don't have that. We have Genesis with 2 nus and an eta instead of an epsilon, which means birth, where Genesis in Matthew 1:1 meant generation, like to generate something, like a generator. So this is the book of all that Jesus generated. He made the church. He made, he did miracles. He did healings. He died on the cross. He rose again from the dead. This is all that he generated. So in your life, like say we're talking about D.A. Waite, this is all that he generated in his life, you know. So we're talking about those things. And so that's what Matthew is talking about. So they changed that to this is the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. So Mark Ward actually changed that, okay. And then he also had two other things, which were the two names, the Amon or Amos, and then there's the other one, the Asaph and Asa issues. And so he marked them. And I thought, well, if I've shown, basically I showed him 4 places where he needed to put that the Textus Receptus was different to the critical text. He put in 3 of them. I'm thinking, man, if he's going to put in 3 a chapter, you know, it's 260 chapters. We're looking at a lot of changes. You know, we're looking at, you know, 700-800 places where he probably hasn't seen or doesn't know where there's differences. And I'm thinking, why are we doing all this work for this guy? You know what I mean? Like, what's he actually trying to prove? And he was basically saying, see, there's hardly any differences between the critical text and the Textus Receptus. And I'm thinking, yeah, because you're not putting them in there, you know. So anyway, I sort of, so we were talking at that time. He probably mightn't even remember that, but Peter Gurry and Elijah Hixson, a lot of these guys were quite frequent on Facebook chatting. But it seemed he does talk on the Textus Receptus Academy that I run, and I'm going to look at that a little bit later. But at the end of the day, he has blocked me on Facebook, so he doesn't see anything that I've ever written. I think he would have gone through some of my videos because I have been quite prolific in writing or in making videos about the Textual Confidence Collective, and usually every video that he brings out that triggers me, I do a whole video on it, or maybe 2 or 3 videos on it. So Pastor Brett says, while I'm not a huge book fan, I think I will purchase a copy of Waite's book. It's worth having. It's very, like, for the 90s, this is before the King James only controversy of James White, which seemed to be the main one that was coming against all, you know, King James, and they were basically throwing majority text people in there as well. So if you weren't critical text, you're in a cult, you know, sort of thing. So Docky's in the house with his cup of coffee. Pastor Brett says, I used my copy of Stephanus 1550 while going through your translation work. While I have many other Greek works, Stephanus is my favorite Greek text. Yeah, and so like a berries like this has the 1550 of Stephanus, and so that's an interlinear as well. So yeah, I've found that very helpful. But there are places where it's wrong, and sometimes, like James White in his book, The King James Only Controversy, he'll point out where there's the King James doesn't match up with the Textus Receptus, but he's pointing to the 1550, not to the 1598 of Beza, which is basically Scrivener's text. And so, yeah, but that's interesting that you're going through. I'm open to any type of correction and talking about that. And so, time for work, y'all. Thanks, Nick. Have a blessed evening in Jesus' name. Yeah, thanks for jumping in. Be Separate says Webster's 1828 American Dictionary Online has a great archaic word list. I didn't know that. Okay, so that would be a very interesting thing to look at. I might even see if I can copy that. No, I can't copy it. Webster's 1828 dictionary. Archaic word list. Let's have a look at that. Yes, so my friend runs this site. Webster's. He runs quite a lot of TR sites. He runs Textus Receptus Bibles, quite a lot. And usually it's actually at the bottom of the page. Yeah, King James Bible Dictionary runs that one. King James Bible 1611, Dictionary 1828, Webster's, Textus Receptus Bibles, Treasury of Scripture Knowledge, the King's Bible. And so, yeah, he's been very helpful for me as well. So American Dictionary. Anyway, that'll be something that I have to look up maybe later. But yeah, thanks for that. I'll keep that page open so I can check that out later. So Bryan Ross is in the house, and so that's probably good timing, because the heading of this video is, what is the heading of this video? I might go to my my channel. Yeah, so it's D.A. Waite legacy. So I've sort of talked about D.A. Waite. So just letting people know that D.A. Waite has passed away. So letting people know that. And it was quite interesting. I sort of felt like when I was interviewing Phil Stringer, like at times people go through all sorts of things in different fellowships and denominations and all the rest of it. And sometimes, like Phil Stringer said, there can be charismatic leaders. And I'm not saying whether they're, good, bad, or ugly or whatever, but sometimes these charismatic leaders can push for something. Like D.A. Waite obviously pushed for the Dean Burgon Society. Once he's gone, like Phil Stringer said, this is the first year the Dean Burgon Society aren't meeting. And so it's like, this is where D.A. Waite, he gets sick and the whole movement sort of can crumble. And I can understand people wanting to avoid that. But at the same time, there are people who, they just have that charisma about them. You look at some of the moves of God that have happened, and, looking through church history, there are some people who, they were the move of God. Whenever they turned up, thousands of people came out and got saved and all the rest of it. When they weren't there, it just didn't happen. And so some people, it just happens with them. And so, but what do we do? So I'll just sort of finish up the D.A. Waite section. He's left us a legacy of lots and lots of written material, lots and lots of things that can be examined. And I've often thought it would be great to get everything that's in D.A. Waite's library, and I'd probably prefer to have it online. I'm sure, like David Cloud did this. I remember getting his encyclopedia or something. It was on a CD-ROM back in the day, and that was gold. It was like, he's got articles and all sorts of things. Now, me and David Cloud don't see eye to eye. He thinks I'm a heretic. He basically told me that. I said, can I put your articles on my Textus Receptus site? And I said, look, we probably see eye to eye on absolutely everything, probably except that I think that the gifts of God are still around. And he was like, so you're a heretic. And he said, no, you can't use any of my material. I was like, okay. And so, and a lot of these guys I am in disagreement with on some things. We would have friendly debates on all these things. But I can recognize when there has been superior scholarship in certain areas. Some of the people who are bringing out stuff on the pre-trib rapture, I don't agree with them with much else, but it's like, okay, they've got a really good rapture position and premillennial stance, and so I would be in agreement with them. But it was really interesting to listen to Phil Stringer, because he had been involved with the Dean Burgon Society, and he sort of moved on to his own thing. And it's going to be interesting to talk to Kirk DeVitro, because no doubt he would be at the Dean Burgon or the D.A. Waite funeral. And when you think about it, like Dean Burgon, like he passed away in like the 1890s, I think it was. And D.A. Waite was born in 1927. It's not that long away. You know what I mean? Like some of these older guys who have these, really long lifespans, like 90 years. It's huge. You're nearly a century of just seeing things come and go. There's a lot of wisdom there, and that's why I really wanted to talk to Phil Stringer, but also Kirk DeVitro. He's got a lot of understanding, a lot of wisdom. And like D.A. Waite, no doubt, would have seen things change as new Bibles came along, seen the way that churches have changed, seen the way that the culture's changed. And yeah, I think it's really important to get the perspective of these older guys and to listen carefully to what they're saying and not just dismiss it. And because sometimes we can just go, oh, they're older guys, I'm not going to listen to them. And in a way, I got to the point where I was listening to Joe Chambers and D.A. Waite like so much that I could probably finish their sentences. And when they started talking about certain things, I get on a roll and I'm like, yeah, well, I've heard this before, and sort of just fast forwarded a bit. But not saying it wasn't important, but that stuff got into me. And that's one of the main reasons why I have a solid foundation in King James Textus Receptus material is because of people like D.A. Waite. And so, I recommend people jump on sermon audio, go through D.A. Waite's material, look at his books, look at PDFs. I hardly ever buy books nowadays. Usually, if I am getting something, I'll try and get it on a computer. But yeah, this book helped me immensely back in the day. And even in his appendix, he'd have just lots of questions like, could the Holy Spirit use a non-King James Bible? And so, just these type of answers where people say, oh, so you're saying that I can't be saved because I read an NIV, these type of arguments. And even Will Kenny, he was doing a debate today that I listened to against PJ James. And so I've already debated PJ James quite a few years ago. And I just find his argumentations are pretty weak. There's not really that much substance. His arguments have been answered like so long ago. And some of his arguments are actually not even King James arguments. They're actually Bible contradiction arguments that people like Josh McDowell dealt with like in the 90s. It's like, well, why are you bringing this up? Because in every Bible there's the same problem, So anyway, I thought I would mention that D.A. Waite has passed away. So there he is in his chaplaincy uniform. He's got his cross there, and he was a army chaplain. So yeah, I can't even fathom. Imagine being alive in 1945. That's just, to me, this is all old history. But to a lot of these older guys, it's their reality. That's what they remember back in their youth. They were in the military. They were fighting against Hitler. It's pretty wild. Anyway, so I'll shut that down. And what I'll do is I will. Okay, so I've just got a message here from Will Kinney. Okay, I'll answer that a bit later. So I'll just go to the Textus Receptus Academy. Okay, so it's always risky when I open up my Facebook online because, a pop-up can come up. It can be a chat from anyone, So that's what we're watching now. So this is on the Textus Receptus Academy. So this was a debate. So I'm just sort of going to go through a few things, and then I'm going to deal with the Gail Riplinger stuff that Bryan Ross has been chatting about. So is the King James Bible the only legitimate English Bible? And so I sort of find these titles are a little bit strange in a sense where I don't think it's Donnie's problem or Will Kinney's problem. It's usually something that PJ James wants to title it, because when we had our debate, it was something similar. And so every time I brought up mistakes in modern versions, he would just say, well, I'm not even talking about modern versions. The debate's not about modern versions. It's about the King James. And so, well, thankfully, he didn't do that too much with Will Kinney, but he didn't really have much to say. There wasn't much in that. And so, but we've been looking at these videos, and I've actually sort of missed a whole bunch of chat that's happened here. Okay, so that was put on there a day ago by Christopher Yetzer. That, yeah, Matthew Verschure has been chatting about these things. And one thing that's interesting, like I've interviewed Matthew Verschure, gone through issues that we would be in disagreement with, but we're sort of like, okay, we're both living in Australia and we both have like a King James stance. Now, I do believe that you can update the words of the King James. He believes that you can't. And he would even sort of say that in his book, like I've read everything that Matthew Verschure's put out so far as I know, that's on his website. When Bryan Ross today was, or I listened to it today, I think it was done a couple of days ago, but he was talking about like criticisms against his view. He was talking about a book called Glistening Truths. And so I went through all that looking for places where I was updating in the King James Version 2023 edition. I didn't want to update things in such a way that was offensive to my conscience, offensive to the King James, to the Greek, or in opposition in any way. And especially since Gail Riplinger has sort of made out that there is a lot of difference, say, between always and always, this type of thing. So I wanted to know about those arguments. And so what I've found is even just going through this issue, and I'm sure Matthew Verschure will agree with this, that Matthew Verschure does seem to be highly influenced by that concept that the King James Bible has its own built-in dictionary. So what Bryan Ross has done in these videos that he's got, like this is part 3. Does the King James Bible have a built-in dictionary, amplification and expansion, and Riplinger reliance? And so, talking about where this idea came from. And so basically, Bryan Ross, I think, absolutely correctly nailed this and has gone through a lot of Riplinger's material and come to the point where he thinks in the Ankerberg debate between, was it Dan Wallace, James White, I think Farstead was there from the New King James. There were some other guys there, and they were debating against Sam Gipp, Thomas Strauss, Joseph Chambers, and I can't remember who else. But they were saying, what dictionary do you use to Sam Gipp? And he sort of said, well, none. You have to check them all, sort of thing. And they were like, what? You're not even checking a modern dictionary. You're not even checking a dictionary. And so, but Bryan Ross clearly pointed out it was a bit of a bait and switch there. He was sort of asking one question, but then turned it around to another issue, which we see, Dan Wallace and James White, these guys are experts at doing that. But he was saying that the built-in dictionary concept was just non-existent until then, till 1995. And then that issue has grown to the point where in 1998, this book came out, Language of the King James Bible. And I do remember seeing back in the day a Riplinger video where she talks about this type of stuff. So this is the original 1998 edition. So I can't even remember if I got it back then, but I remember reading through it and sort of going, I don't know. So it didn't seem like a definitive thing. I was just reading through, and when I got to the King Merodach thing, where it was sort of talking about the Titanic evil Merodach, king of Babylon, Rupert Murdoch, the owner of exclusive printing rights to the NIV, has generated the following descriptions from secular journalists. A pornographer, totally internationalist. Never before have I seen evil so clearly expressed in a human face. Rupert is here. Lucifer has come, trailing smoke and salt. So it's sort of, it's a bit like cross between, something that like D.A. Waite would write, but then it's sort of got this Texe Marrs-y sort of feel to it. But at the end, I was like, okay, does it have a built-in dictionary? So I got, and at the time, I'm a New King James guy. So I'm like, okay, well, let's see the Old King James. So I started reading through. I got to a hard word. I read it, and I thought, I want to understand this in context. I looked through it, read it again, looked around for other words, and I couldn't understand it. And it just wasn't coming to me. Now, I know you're supposed to sort of go to other references and things like that, but it was like, if you were just reading through it and you come to that hard word, and then I grabbed a dictionary. I've got a Webster's there. I grabbed that, looked up the word, and it made perfect sense. And I was like, well, just use a dictionary. And that's what Bryan Ross has said. Up until Riplinger, people used to constantly point to the Oxford English Dictionary, Webster's, and all that. And so this seems to be a lot of the argumentation that Mark Ward and others bring out. Like, oh, you're not allowed to go to the Greek and Hebrew. You're not allowed to use a dictionary and all this stuff. Where really, like people like D.A. Waite and Dean Burgon Society, the vast majority of King James people that I've known, Will Kinney, they've all used dictionaries and commentaries and, looking at this external stuff. Where some people are like, no, you have to get it from the Bible. It's got a built-in dictionary. And I guess I can see where Matthew Verschure has that as well. And just to show you, like, Easter confusion. So I'll just quickly get this up. Sure. Hey guys. Okay, so we had a dialogue here. So this is 2 years ago. So Nick Sayers, the TR guy, so that's what James White used to call me, so that's why I had it there. And Matthew Verschure, Bible Protector, have a dialogue. So we chatted about a whole bunch of things there. And so we're both from Melbourne as well. So we do get along. I guess it's like, two people being from LA or New York or something like that. But that's actually not the one that I wanted to find, because up until then, and I'm still, open to Matthew Verschure being very critical about what I do, but he was doing videos sort of against like my Easter videos. And so I'll try and find it. Actually, there's no point in finding it. I'm just going to describe it. So basically, it was a video saying that it was called Nick Sayers' Easter Confusion. And it was sort of saying, well, we can agree with Nick Sayers on what he says about the King James Bible and having Easter there, but why did he go to the Hebrew and say that the word Pesach has the root of limp in it, like to pass over or to limp over, saying that that's like a new definition. I'm sort of adding to, because you can't really go to the Greek, you can't really go to the Hebrew sort of thing. And over the years, I guess I've sort of noticed that there are groups of people who, if you do an article and you go to the Oxford English Dictionary, you go to the Webster's, you do all this stuff, they'll scold you for doing that. And so, but that's sort of like the main thing that I do, go to these things. And so, so in a way, like, you know, when I did my interview with Matthew Bashir, we knew what we'd said about each other over the years. There's nothing, it's not like it was hidden. But yeah, if you want to go and have a look at that interview, it's quite interesting. And we ended up, after that interview, I think talking for about another 4 hours just on the phone, because we were like, actually this, that, and we're talking about all sorts of different things. But what we see here, and I might actually just read through this. Where is Bryan Ross going with his views? Honest question and discussion. People here might be able to help me. It seems like he is rejecting dispensationalism. What is he embracing instead? And so Bryan Ross, in the video that I listened to today, I mean, clearly Bryan Ross is a dispensationalist. And according to Matthew Bashir and according to me, we would say that Bryan Ross, yeah, because he's mid-acts dispensation, mid-acts dispensationalist, we would say that he's probably even a hyper-dispensationalist. And he admitted that that's probably where he would get labeled by some people. Number two, while he rightly points out bad academia with Gail Riplinger, is it his intention to then argue that points she has said must be all wrong? Her beliefs include all tongues spoken at Pentecost include Gothic, which allegedly is directly connected with English, that modern translations intentionally or unintentionally have a cultic content, and the King James Bible has some kind of built-in dictionary. And so I would just recommend that you go to Bryan Ross's video. So I'm just going to get that up. So Grace Life Bible. Okay, that would be down the bottom here now. Here it is. So Grace Life Bible is the page for Bryan Ross. So here he has, does the King James Version have a built-in dictionary? Part 1, 2, 3, and 4. But then the video that I went through today as well was addressing some recent questions regarding my position on the King James. So he is answering these issues. See, he's answering these issues that are brought up by Matthew Bashir here. So I'll just quickly read through these. So I won't continue to go through and say Bryan Ross said this and that. I recommend you go to the video. So John Cain, centuries ago, argued basically the Bible is its own interpreter. The idea that the Bible defines its own words and concepts is a good one. John Cain made a King James Bible with marginal cross-references designed for this very purpose. Are Bryan Ross and his followers accepting this? And is the issue that this method is argued for to be used specifically with the King James Bible? Number 4, most importantly, there is a recognition of the distinction between, say, establish and establish, or always and always, etc. Are the exact nuances of English being upheld? Number 5, he points out there is a difference between what I might call a nuanced King James Bible only view of today and a classical King James Bible onlyism. What inference is he making on the argument for an inbuilt dictionary, which nomenclature is relatively recent? Number 6, does he distinguish between the concept of scriptures, that is specifically the King James Bible's self-definition, and the other concepts Gail Riplinger mentions, like how she uses euphonics or something to argue that the S sound has a certain primal meaning? Number 7, I've noticed other materials too, which challenge some errors some King James Bible onlyists have stated. For example, the whole Antioch line of Bibles thing. But are these genuine King James Bible only self-reflective judgments, which I agree with, or are the judgments from someone who is secretly a crypto Textus Receptus only, which is a slippery slope to modernism? Genuine questions would like answers, and so we got quite a lot of answers down here. So I'd recommend that people go through and look at this. So Stephen Avery's jumping in here as well. about the concept of TR onlyism, because sometimes what you have is people who believe in Textus Receptus onlyism. They are, some of these guys reject some of the readings in the King James. They might say like the word church, it should be assembly and all this, and you know, oh, they shouldn't have baptism, they should have immersion, and you know, and so they're actually wanting to change a lot of the terminology of the King James, which is part of why the King James is the King James. And so yeah, we see quite a lot here. So this issue of the language of the King James Bible has become a hot topic at the moment, and so with Bryan Ross talking about this on his channel, and many others chatting about this, and so I actually haven't gone through this thread yet, so I've really got to go through this. I've just been so busy lately, but I've noticed there's quite a lot of interaction with this on my Facebook, so I'm going to have to catch up with that. So, but it's good. We're on the page now. I'll just say, like, ones like this, I looked at it and I thought, well, I'll leave it, because he that rejecteth me and receiveth not my words hath one that judges him. So that's fine. But sometimes there can be things. I think there was something about like the Roman Catholics or something. And it's like, oh yeah, that's the reading of John 1:8 by Matt Singleton, and that's fine. But I think there was a Catholic. Maybe I actually deleted it, just simply because it's like, yeah, that's fine to go around and put, you know, stuff about how, you know, the Pope's off the wall or whatever. But at the end of the day, what does it have to do with the Textus Receptus? And so that's why, you know, if anyone sees that I've deleted things that are just sort of not relevant, it's because of those reasons. So and so Stephen Hayes says, sad to hear of Dr. Waite's passing. Yeah, and it was interesting because I was asking people about that. I was saying, is D.A. Waite still alive? What's the go? And then Phil Stringer just sort of said, oh, he's not in good health. And, you know, just so happened, you know, it was sort of like, I think it was the next day that he passed away. Actually, it might have been the same day on the 4th. But, yeah, anyway. And then I'm interviewing Kirk DeVitro this week. So no doubt we'll chat about that. So I know I constantly get this spam coming up. I thought I didn't delete these yet because I get these really dumb spammy things. All I have to do is go decline, and then go ban John Mitchell, ban Tim, ban Roberto Summers. And so I just go through and do that. There's usually 6 or 7 of them a day. Do I want another admin on Textus Receptus Academy? Not really. I just find that having another admin, I've got other pages where there's other admins. My Textus Receptus page, which is just Textus Receptus. Oops. Now, this used to be the page where everything happens. There's 7,300 people on there. And I used to share things on the Textus Receptus page and get hundreds of people looking at it and thinking about it and all the rest of it. Like now, this video here's got 1 like, you know, and a lot of the time it's, I don't know who they are or anything. It's just like some random. But we used to have, Will Kinney would be on here. KJV Today guy would be on here. A whole bunch of Contras would be on here. And it was really a hot place to talk about Bible issues. And what I did, there was one person who offered to be an admin. So I said, yeah, cool. And so I sort of got busy, and then I realized they were putting up all these posts about how we have to call the name of God like Yahusha or something. It was like, no, the name's Jehovah. What are you doing? And there was about 4 or 5 other pages that they were putting on. I hadn't realized they were basically spamming these pages with vegetarian concepts that Jesus never ate meat and all this stuff, and you should never kill an animal, and I'm just thinking they've just destroyed all these pages, because a lot of people just go, oh, this is off the wall, and they think I'm doing it. So having another admin, I've just sort of learned the hard way. And even like I've got a really good friend who I trust. We've almost got exactly the same beliefs, but he's not really strong on the Textus Receptus. So sometimes he would share things that are sort of a bit too like Ruckmanite, you know what I mean? And he thinks he's helping, and it's like, oh, sorry, dude, I've got to delete that. And even on, I run the page, the Roman Catholic Church Exposed. So this again, it's got like 7,000 people in it, and yeah, just like things like this, showing it's sort of like a drive-through confessional, just and the thing is, the front of it is wild, it's got some pretty wild pictures, and so I let him be an admin, and he changed the picture the first day, which is like a full no-no. And I'll just tell you guys, sometimes it was actually Stephen Avery that pointed this out. He said, look, when he's dealing with people online, if they actually change their photo and they change it regularly, he doesn't know who he's talking to, because you got Bob Bramick from Iowa, and it's like, who's that? And so having the same picture, you're like, oh, I know who that is. And even some people, they have a different name to their real name. And even Stephen Avery does this, because his name's Stephen Avery Spencer, but he has Stephen Avery. And I noticed that, I think it was Michael George, where it was Michael Holner is his full name. And I thought these were 2 different people right up until the debate of Donnie. And I'm like, oh, I thought it was his other person, And so, having something clear, and so that's why I've actually kept my my picture on Facebook there, which is this one. I've sort of kept that for years now, because I sort of thought, well, it's a good picture, I like it, and also it, whenever people see I've written something, it's not just another picture. Now, I guess if I did show a different picture, people probably would recognize me, but then again, so I sort of have changed that. But anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about that. So let's just shut those down. Now, what else are we going to look at here? So I'll go back to, I'm just actually going to put the fan on. It might make a little bit of noise, but it's getting quite hot here. So my channel, so we're looking at some Textus Receptus Academy threads, and so I might still continue to do that. So I've sort of shown the Bryan Ross stuff. I'll go back to the Textus Receptus Academy. And so I guess too, I'm putting my feelers out there, because I have announced that I'm going to be doing debates on this channel, and I haven't really set up any debates yet. I've just been doing interviews, which I've thoroughly enjoyed, actually. I've really enjoyed doing those interviews. But if anyone is wanting to debate on this channel, I can moderate. I think I've found a good moderator that whenever I want to do a debate. So pretty much I think I've got like 2 or 3 debates that I can just sort of do straight away. But if anyone is wanting to debate, if you have someone who is willing to debate you, I will host that on this channel. And so it's something I've been wanting to do for quite a long time. I think that we've got a lot of quality people who see. One of the things is, like, say, the debate that I listened to today. I've debated PJ James, and the debate was sort of pretty lousy. Like, I really felt like not much got said. I think most of the debates I go through and chat about for a long time afterwards and make after videos and things like that. But like with PJ James, I didn't even bother. It was just sort of, I think it was almost exactly the same questions that he went through with Will Kinney. So that was about 4 years ago. And I'm just thinking, haven't you grown from here, you know? So I sort of felt for Will, because it's sort of some of the things that were asked were just really not scholarly at all. But Will does a very good job. And the only thing I disagree with Will, and Will knows about this, I don't gel on the numerology things where, you know, you add up these letters and it equals 7, or it equals 70 or 77, or, you know, and that proves it's from God. I'm not really into that, you know. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing, but to me, it just doesn't motivate me to go, yeah, the Bible's accurate because of that. To me, the Bible's accurate because it's accurate, not because the numbers all add up. So oftentimes we get this type of question: is this a King James Version only group, or actually a Textus Receptus group? You know what I mean? Most probably not really knowing that it's an open forum. So you've got people there who can be full King James only, posting their stuff there. You've got people who can be critical text or majority text, like Dwayne Green jumps on there. But usually this is you know, an accusation where people want this to be fully policed, and they want me to do something about it, you know, sort of thing. And it's like, well, I'm all for open discussion. So if someone puts something there that is, you know, hyper King James only, you know, Ruckmanite sort of stuff, people can comment underneath and say, well, that's going a bit too far. I think you should have this type of position. And that's what I want, is discussion on that. Not just we're just narrowing it down so we're controlling the conversation, because some King James only people make very good points. Some of the issues that have been brought out about Scrivener and Burgon, you know, not being TR people, have been pointed out by King James only people. And that's one of the reasons why they would say, well, I would never join the Dean Burgon Society, because these guys, you know, they're supporting Burgon, who's sort of like a majority text guy, or Scrivener, who's just a critical text guy, but just did the TR because he was told to, not because he was really a TR guy. And, you know, and these things have been pointed out by King James Version only, and I've read through it and gone, yeah, that's good information. Because oftentimes, even within, like, you got the critical text guys throwing you into the King James only camp, but then within the groups, you've got people throwing you into, oh, well, you're actually a Textus Receptus only guy. You're not really a King James only guy, but you're a King James preferred this. And I just read through material. I don't really care where it comes from, who it comes from. If it's true, I data mine it and gut it and apply it to myself and to what I believe. And so there have been things said by King James Version onlyists that I'm like, yeah, that's true. Good point. There have been things pointed out by Textus Receptus onlyists. Yeah, true. Good point. And so I think having, you know, these groups within the larger group, that I guess it's fine to have those groups. Some people want that distinction, and that's fine. You know, there's King James only, TR only, ecclesiastical text, confessional bibliology, King James preferred. And so you got all these different groups. And so, of course, there's going to be some people who are like, full, Gail Riplinger followers to the back teeth, and they're going to butt up with someone who's into confessional bibliology. But usually that type of conversation, if they can just keep the heat out of that conversation and just the ad hominem attack, but even if there is a bit of that, sometimes you can get a really good discussion between these type of people, because they're coming from different angles and they're looking at something, they're looking at a truth and they're trying to iron it out. And sometimes people can have 20 things wrong, but one thing correct. And everyone adopting that correct thing, it just makes us get closer and closer to explaining the truth. It's just like if you were a young earth creationist, you wouldn't just listen to Answers in Genesis. You'd listen to Jonathan Safadi. You'd listen to Ken Hovind, even though you mightn't agree with everything that he's doing or done or whatever. It's like, listen to what he's saying at least. And so in a young earth creationist, academy group, you would have all sorts of different people who are young earth creationists. You can't just go, well, you follow Ken Hovind, delete, and I don't know who John Diz did. I don't know any of these guys. Half the time. And some of he's a top contributor. I don't even know who this guy is. Now he might be disappointed in that, but it's like there's like 3,000 people in this group. I've got other groups with 7,000 people in it. I'm getting email daily, like dozens and dozens of people contact me through the week, and I'm like, half the time I have no idea if I've talked to them before, unless it just says, this is a thread, or I'll look at their name and it's like, oh, I actually talked to them. Like Phil Stringer, I didn't realize I was in conversation with him in 2011 quite a bit about his William Carey site. So you've got some, and you've also got critical text guys that come on here, and even Mark Ward jumps on here. You know what I mean? So, so I've got to look at that video later. So Matthew Verscher on the D.A. Waite issue says D.A. Waite made some faltering steps toward understanding that the King James Bible had not changed since 1611 to now. Despite his allegiance to the Greek and Hebrew, he was instrumental in helping the King James Bible case, even me personally. Although he was a Textus Receptus only, and there was a conflict between his position and the broad King James Bible only position, he nevertheless has done a good service in helping the King James Bible. Revelation 14:13, I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works do follow them. D.A. Waite provided the vital link between Burgon and Scrivener and us today. I would put him in the same class as Ian Paisley and Edward Hills, as those who did things to contribute to the strength of our position for the future. He was a providential instrument, to be sure. D.A. Waite was also attacked heavily by the anti-King James Bible onlys, and yet I never heard him say anything ungracious in response to them. Yeah, he was always very gracious, sometimes too much, where he would say, oh, they're our brothers, we should love them. And I'm thinking, no, they're heretics, they're off the wall, So, but he erred on the side of being, very nice. So just looking through this thread, the Bryan Ross one, and so Stephen Avery sort of picked up on a bit of this and said, on the two lines errors, there is not a TR only issue. I was pointing these problems out. For example, Vulgate on one side, Old Latin on the other. From a purely King James Bible perspective, Bryan followed up. If any Textus Receptus only picked it up, that is incidental truth, all fine. And I actually give an occasional thanks to non-King James Bible writers like Glenn Jersky and Doug Kudelik the stopped clock for pushing the issues which overlap with Wilkinson Waldensian myths. Yes, there are other two line problems, but the charts crash and burn on the Fux Latin lines distinction. The Fu Latin lines distinction, and I didn't swear there, I promise. And I was always surprised that Bryan did not accept clear distinctions like establish, running to Old English Dictionary, blah, blah. Not sure if he used the far same Greek Hebrew word argument. Has Bryan yet moved to truth on this question? There you could sense some TR onlyism. Does Bryan have the same difficulty not seeing beret, where the distinction is even that much more clear? If Bryan could get stronger on authorized version word distinctions, his teaching would be greatly improved. Similar point on the superb small s for spirit in 1 John 5:8, which I see as the number one presentation spelling issue. So yeah, that's part of the whole Cambridge 1900 edition. So some people have been talking about that for quite a long time. And I think that's sort of going to become an issue because Matthew Verschure is, I guess, the main advocate for the Cambridge Pure Edition 1900. I sort of gravitated towards that position simply because I saw lots of people like Stephen Avery, like Matthew Verschure, like Will Kinney, and I went through the issues myself and went, well, it just seems like all they've done is just tidied up some of the problems that were in former printed editions. And so have I seen things that can be improved in that edition? Yes, definitely some italics. I think all of us would agree the italics in 1 John chapter 3 verse 16, where it has the love of God, and there are italics there. The of God is in italics. Clearly that is backed up by Beza. It's it's not in italics in the original 1611. It shouldn't be in italics now. Things like that. It would be great to actually go through and find general agreement on all those sort of things. But when it comes to words, like I did do a study through the Matthew Verschure's material, and he's written lots and lots. Let's just grab his website. So Matthew Verschure's Bible Protector. And so type in Bible Protector, you come to this, and he's got lots of different formats. You can download the King James Version in. Some lessons, guide to the Cambridge Pure Edition. So let's just open that. But then lots of church booklets, Authorized King James Bible Connection, answering objections to the King James Bible. And so he's got quite a lot of things. And a lot of this is written nearly 20 years ago. Church audio. I've gone through everything that's on this site. I've gone through as far as I know. Articles and statements, public domain resources. Like some of these I haven't gone through because they're just basically PDFs of older books and things like that. Public domain multimedia. And so, there's a lot on that website to go through, and then you've got a whole bunch of things that you can look at. But so the guide to the Pure Cambridge edition, and I think this is going to become probably a pretty big in-house debate, probably between Bryan Ross and Matthew Verschure, because Bryan Ross has written a book about the American King James Version, and Matthew Verschure is talking about the Cambridge Pure Edition 1900 edition. And I think Bryan Ross has heard people say, Well, he's coming from the perspective where he's heard people say that if you have a King James Bible that says thoroughly and not throughly, where it says, I think it's study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly no, wrong verse. That the man of God may be fully equipped, thoroughly equipped, I think it is, or thoroughly equipped. And so those two words appear in different editions of the King James. The American editions of the King James, most of them had thoroughly. The English editions of the King James had thoroughly. So Bryan Ross is saying, well, these are basically the same words, but they're sort of interchangeable. They mean the same thing, where some people are saying no. And I guess one is correct. And I'm not against an update of a word. So I don't go, well, this one's correct and it's forever sort of settled in time. But it would be good to go, okay, which one is actually the one that was supposed to be used? But then looking at it, and like Bryan Ross says, well, do we have to have verbatim identicality, or can we look at these as basically they're synonymous? It means exactly the same thing. It's like, so, and I think a lot of people don't understand the issue sometimes with like recompense, with the end of it sometimes having an SE or a CE, and one of them is an adjective, I think it is, and one of them's a verb. Anyway, these type of things. And so like here it's saying the correct text has other things: razor, inquire, counselor, expenses, enkel, giba, lowercase spirit in these two things. And so I've gone through this book, and one that was very interesting was further. Further and farther. So because I remember I went through all these, but this was one where someone asked me, okay, what's the difference? And this was easy to explain, because it's like, well, further and farther, the difference is quite easy to see. One is more philosophical, where you're saying, I'm not going to continue this conversation any further if you are. But when you're in real time and you're walking somewhere, I'm not going to walk any farther, FAR, because it has the word far in it. So that's a good one to use and to explain, the microscopic differences between King James editions, etc. Some of these capitalized Spirit of God, not Spirit of God with a small spirit. These 12 places. I don't know why I said 8. I think it's the number that people say there's a differences between the King James and the Hebrew Bible or something. There's like 8 differences, but I've seen that contested. And so, but I think this type of material, because Bryan Ross has written the book about the American editions, which sometimes goes against the Cambridge edition, because it has the spelling of, savior with a U, or labor with a U. Is that different? Are they different Bibles? Are these words, completely different? And I remember when I used to run the website for Christian Witness Ministries and talking with Philip Powell, because he was from Wales, he always preferred the British way of spelling, which was hard because word was always, it would always come up in American spelling. So all of these places would come up as an error with red underline. And unless you went into, I know how to do it now, where you went into the program and you basically said that you want British English, then it wouldn't do that. But I didn't know how to do it at the time. So all the articles were filled with these red lines, and just sometimes with an extra E or an extra U or something like that. And I was sort of like, just do American English, that I guess it's one of those things. It's like with French people, they're like, no, we're never going to speak English. We're going to speak French. We don't care. and so they're trying to keep their French. They're trying to restore their French language and as part of nationalism and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, everyone's speaking American English. It's like, it's good to learn that and probably do your articles in that as well, so it doesn't just come up with 70 errors just on a basic article. And sometimes my computer would just say, there's too many errors in this article to underline it. So you couldn't use, the error check on Word. So anyway, that's something that's going to be interesting to look at. So Bryan Ross has just printed the book. Where are we? Grace Life Bible. I think I'll go to his website. Bryan Ross, Grace Life. Here we go. Whoops. So Grace Life Press. So he's written the King James Bible in America. So he knows quite a bit about the history of the Bible in America. Now he's just written The Myth of Verbatim Identicality. And so Bryan contacted me and said he wanted to send me a free book on this so I could go through it and I guess do a critique on that. I might even do some videos on that. And I've been critical on some of the things that Bryan Ross has said, like Jude chapter 1, verse 25, where I've sort of looked into Theodore Beza's material and also older English Bibles and sort of pointed out things there, like an actual spelling error, print error in Beza's edition. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this because I've been going through all of Bryan Ross's material for probably a good couple of years now. I went through all of his material on the history of the Bible, the Bible History Hour, I think it's called, and it's very good. And so at the moment, it's up to the King James 1611, and it's talking about the sales of the King James and and different editions of the King James that came afterwards. And so it's very interesting. It's something that I've always been very fascinated with about that era. And even books like this, like Bullinger, because I'm pretty sure Bullinger was he was the guy who ran the Trinitarian Bible Society for a while, unless there was another guy called Bullinger doing that. Hopefully I haven't conflated them. But Bryan Ross is at the moment really coming against the concept of the inbuilt dictionary, which I've come up against this quite a lot. So I'll be doing some sort of study online. I'll show what a dictionary says or show what the Greek says or the Hebrew, and people will just say, why can't you just use the King James Bible? And this can creep into the new IFB guys, and so I'm pulling them over the coals with their eschatology. But sometimes you get people saying, no, you got to use Bible words. So in other words, it has to be a King James Bible word, like you're using the word rapture, and it should be like caught up. They're catching up. And so sometimes they're trying to train themselves to use only Bible words. And I don't think that's really necessary. I think it's just a waste of time, really. And some of these things, they sound really good. It's like, I remember really good friend of mine, love him to bits, but he was saying that he would read the Bible and nothing else. He wasn't reading anything outside of the Bible. So not even a dictionary, not even another book, just the Bible. And it sounded really good, but he eventually sort of fizzed out in his faith. I'm not saying it was because he was just reading the Bible, but I think it didn't really do anything for him or really against him. It was just sort of like, why are you doing this? Why? It just seemed like he was almost saying that we're polluting ourselves by looking outside of the Bible at definitions or commentaries and things like that, which I guess some people do. They follow a commentator and they're like, that's it, and they don't question everything. But I would read everything and then make a decision, because I'd rather be educated on things. And what I found was I would talk to him about things and he would just have one perspective and that's it. And sometimes not really even understanding what the words meant. And it was quite, you can get frustrated with that. And what I found too was later on with the rise of the internet, he was just watching YouTube videos and sort of getting the same information, but just spoken to him or taught in a sermon. And so he'd send me sermons, but then he would say, oh, I don't read any other books. I'm thinking, well, you've just heard someone basically explain something, so you may as well have read a book about it, But we can adopt these religious type of things, It's okay to use a dictionary. People have said to use a dictionary for a long, long time. Yes, I understand some of the dictionaries are written by people who are Unitarians, by heretics, and yada, yada. But at the end of the day, if you understand that not every definition is going to be helpful, then when you go through and you find helpful definitions, you're like, oh, this is great. And you can mark that and say, this is really good, and put an asterisk next to it and say, this is a really good definition. Study it out yourself. You just got to. You got to think about these things, study these things, and not just accept everything that just comes down the pike, So apart from those issues, I think that's about it. Or I might just keep going through the TR Academy one. So we've got a new video about the Geneva translation, the Bible Museum. So I'm not sure if this is copyright or not. So I'll just throw this up. Hopefully it's not copyright. It doesn't look copyrighted. So let's just crack this one open.
Hello and welcome back to the Bible Central Museum, where we do ask that you not touch anything except for the subscribe. The museum has gone through a few renovations. So
I think I saw this guy doing a Trump thing. Oh, he might be from the King James Research Council. Anyway.
So be sure to go back and check out our last tour about the poor man's Bible, because it'd just be a good thing to do. This is one leaf from a 1580 Geneva Bible. You can't have it, it's mine. I've also got a leaf from a 1597 edition. You can have this one. Now, the reason that there's only one leaf here is because a full Bible in this edition would run right around $3,000 to $4,000. I don't have that kind of money, but I do have it on this little spinning frame. And if you're wondering why I keep calling front and back, also called recto and verso, so 2 pages equals 1 leaf. I really like this leaf because it contains a portion of Isaiah, which when read from the Geneva reads like this.
The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever.
On the leaf it might look like graph, but trust me, it's grass. It's called the Geneva Bible because it was translated in Geneva, Switzerland. However, its nickname is actually the Breeches Bible. That comes because of Genesis 3:7, when the Geneva translators were dealing with the passage about Adam and Eve sewing together fig leaves to cover themselves. Well, they said that they sewed breeches to cover themselves, hence the name Breeches Bible. Just goes to show you that if you're going to translate a word as amusing as the word breeches, try not to do it literally at the beginning of the book. The translators were a group of Protestant scholars that had taken up refuge in Geneva. During this time, Mary I was ruling over England. She was a staunch Catholic, and her nickname was Bloody Mary. Well, they were Protestants who preferred not to have their flesh burned off, so since she wasn't ruling over Geneva, the choice to move there seemed rather obvious. Mary's persecution of those who wanted to read and preach the Bible was a very real thing. On August 18th of 1553, a proclamation went out prohibiting the public reading of Scripture. So outside of her jurisdiction, so to speak, these men set about to translate the entire Bible into English. It's unknown exactly who and how many they were. Assistance was given by John Calvin and Theodore Beza. It's also very likely that Miles Coverdale and John Knox offered their services. But it is generally agreed that the principal work was done by William Whittingham, Thomas Sampson, and Anthony Gilby. Hebrew, Greek, Latin, German, and French versions were all consulted for the translation of the Geneva Bible, and the work took 2 years to complete. And for the next 50 to 75 years, it was the most popular English translation, with over 350,000 copies printed. The first English Bible to ever sell more than 250,000 copies. It was the Bible of the Pilgrims, William Shakespeare, and many others. Oliver Cromwell used excerpts from the Geneva Bible for his pocket Bible, which was distributed to the soldiers of his army. The Geneva was also the first study Bible with marginal notes on each page written by the reformers that gave commentary. It was also the first English Bible to have verse divisions, which we can all be very grateful for. You know John 3:16? Well, not this one. Overall, the translation was loved by the common people. The verse divisions and the commentary made it an easy Bible to study. The people had been hungering to read and understand the Word of God, and the Geneva Bible helped them do just that. From 1560, it was printed for nearly 90 years and had over 160 editions. And due to the rising popularity in historic translations, you can get you a copy of the Geneva Bible even today. Well, that is all the time we have for today. The museum is now closing. Remember, admittance fees are a subscription, so how about you hop on down there, click that bell, and ring the button. What? Be sure to leave a comment down below telling us what you thought, maybe with a request for a museum piece that we can put on display next. If we can afford it, maybe we will. Once again, thank you so much for stopping by. You don't have to go home. You just can't stay here.
Okay, so I guess this is the Bible Museum. I saw this guy do a Trump thing the other day. It was sort of like, oh, yeah, that's a bit funny. I'll just have a look. Bible Central. Yeah, this was the Trump thing that I saw, the Trump Bible commentary. So it does seem like a new thing. It's like an apologetics thing. Anyway, so I'm not sure if he's actually from the Bible Museum or he's sort of mocking it a little bit or just having a bit of fun or what the go is. Anyway, I'll just go to community. No, he hasn't got much there. Okay. Anyway, that was just on my feed. So, what else we got here? So Aaron is saying, has anyone read this book? I've thought about reading it. I'm familiar with Sam Gipp, etc. I have read this. I'm pretty sure. No, I haven't read this one. I looked at the other one on the Chick Track site, which is called Answers, I think it is. So I went through that. I sort of would go every now and then like, yep, that's true. But then every like fifth one, I'd go, no, that's not true. That's sort of a bit weird. But it just seems like it's giving old answers to stuff which has been updated nowadays. So it's got 59 comments on that, which is quite a lot. Someone promoting which Bible would Jesus use. So I'm guessing that, oh yeah, that's Jack McElroy. Jordan Kurecki says, I definitely would avoid Sam Gipp due to the reasons Tim Berg stated. Found too many of Sam Gipp's historical statements and assertions to be inaccurate. So yeah, I would be in agreement with that. The two-stream theory, yep. Yeah, so anyway, that's all getting talked about. Timothy Berg said, I read it and was not impressed with his historical work. Yeah. So Matt Singleton has an article about the King James Bible and what it says, sort of like in a sense of predicting itself in Scripture. And so that would be something interesting to go through. I did go through it, but I haven't really studied through it. And I listened to this the other day as well. So this is Dwayne Green, and he's interviewing David Allen Black, who is sort of like a Byzantine guy. And he's talking about Harry Sturz. And so I've got Harry Sturz's book here somewhere. But Harry Sturz is, here it is. So that's the Byzantine text type and New Testament textual criticism. So what I found interesting was that David Allen Black was sort of saying, look, Sturz is not a Byzantine guy. He's definitely a critical text guy, but he was just sort of proving that the Byzantine text has weight, just like the critical text has weight. So it was like, okay. And so, but he does make some really good points. And he pointed out that Dan Wallace had studied under Harry Sturz, and I knew that, but I didn't realize that he had been a Sturzian for 10 years, because he came out and said that the majority text people were modern day Marcionites, which is quite a full-on accusation. I know it was in his earlier years, but that's a heavy thing to say about people. They're modern day Marcionites. So Hudson says hi to the chat and to me. Hey, Hudson. Have you heard former Mormon Han Radis? He recently had an interview with David W. Daniels on the King James Bible. No, I haven't. And so I really should get more into some of David W. Daniels' material, because he does lots of stuff on the Septuagint, and it would be good to go through his videos and just chat about them. And so, yeah, asking for a video on that somewhere. Yeah, so Harry Sturz says there's distinctive Byzantine readings in the papyri, which is very interesting. Alan Stewart says, I've read Dr. Black's small volume on restorational textual criticism. He is a functioning atheist concerning the text of Scripture. Okay, that's a very full-on thing to say, but yeah, Alan Stewart's very well read on these issues. And a lot of the people in the Textus Receptus Academy, they know their stuff. They're not just bozos. And like what I was reading from David Cloud's book, how, people were sort of accusing, King James onlyists as just Neanderthals and all this sort of stuff. And even D.A. Waite wouldn't classify himself as a King James onlyist, just a TR person. But a lot of the people in the Textus Receptus Academy, they're doing like full articles here about certain things. Well, that's just a copy and paste from a book. So, but oftentimes when you just click on these guys, Robert Lee Fawn, go to their blog, they're prolific in writing about these issues. And so it's great to have them on board. A Liberian UMC bishop holds up the Bible and says this is the word of God and quotes the KJV. Okay. That's interesting. Will Kinney's got the whole concept of turtle or turtle dove. So in the Bible, it talks about a turtle. James White mocked this. So he says, James White, in his book, The King James Only Controversy, pokes fun at the King James Bible use of the word turtle when referring to the turtle dove. Mr. White, on page 235 in the section titled Problems in the King James, this is almost as humorous as Song of Songs 2:12. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing of the birds has come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. Then Mr. White comments, turtles are not known for their voices, and how these would be connected with flowers and the singing of birds is unknown. Of course, the passage is not referring to turtles at all, but to the turtle dove, as the modern translations recognize. It's like, it's just an old way of saying it. Oh, yeah, so it says here that he interviewed Phil Stringer as well. I didn't realize that. Would love to see both interviews. Well, I might actually jump onto David Daniels. YouTube. Chick tracks. Okay. So that's his vlog. I guess if I go to just the channel, there we go. I'm already subscribed to that. I watched this the other day. It was quite good. The Ahaziah 22 or 42 when he began to reign. The answer was yes. He began to reign at 22. That reign was stopped, and then he began to reign at 42. So it just makes perfect sense. And so I found that argument was very, very good. But let's look at some of the videos that have come up. Okay, a lot of language stuff there, which is fantastic. Because like when I was in Cambodia, we had like, it was sort of like a chick-chack type of thing. And we went to the hospital there, and we weren't sure if we were even allowed in there. But in the end, we had everyone in the hospital all in this one big room. And the main translator, he just had like, it was like a chick-track, but it wasn't. It was just, but it was very good. And he was just reading through and getting everyone to pray the prayer at the end, and they're all got their heads bowed, and it was amazing. It was so good. There would have had to have been 100 people there, people in hospital beds and all their family around them, and it was just amazing. So maybe I can search for Stringer. Oh yeah, Bridge to Babylon. David Daniels and Phil Stringer are interviewed in a documentary for Adullam Films. Anyway, some interesting stuff there. So, yeah, Will Kinney's written about the turtle dove thing. Obviously, James White doesn't know what he's going on about. That's the interview that I had with Phil Stringer recently. Very, very good. Enjoyed it. I give to you a corrupt Bible. Yep. So the King James Bible Research Council wishes you a happy King James Version Day. So some people were saying it's not the actual release day of the King James, but they didn't really give a date. But I noticed some people saying, no, it's not the actual day. But unless they actually give an alternative and can prove that, it's like, well, you know, that's the day that people say it is at the moment. That's the consensus. What else have we got here? The Isaiah or Morning Star issue that came up today with the Will Kinney debate. And I would just recommend people go to kjvtoday.net for that one. Zechariah 13:6. What are these wounds in your body? NIV. New Living Translation, wounds on your chest. ESV, wounds on your back. New American Standard Bible, wounds between your arms. The King James Bible says wounds in thine hands. Quite interesting, the difference there. Yes, so this is the debate that was recently done between James Knapp Jr. and Mike Holner and Mike Ferrando. So very good. I've been going through those videos myself. Now, this is one thing I just want to throw out there. This quote, now I understand this quote is quoted quite a lot by TR people, King James people. We do not have now in any of our critical texts, Greek texts, or in any translations exactly what the authors of the New Testament wrote. Even if we did, we would not know it. And so I think when you go through the Myths and Mistakes book, he's actually saying that that is a very skeptical view. And then below that, he's saying, but we have a view that's more based on faith and da-da-da. You know, so correct me if I'm mistaken, but I remember hearing someone, I think it was Elijah Hixson, point that out. And I was like, yeah, well, we don't want to just be using that quote, putting Dan Wallace's head there and just using it for that. You know, just say, oh, Dan Wallace said this. We don't want to take him out of context there. And so I've always been very careful to use that quote or not. I used to use it quite a lot, and then I just stopped myself once I heard that, and I thought, well, I've really got to check that. So yeah, 6 days ago, the majority text is not, when the majority text is not the majority text, Romans 3:9, and so that's Jeff Riddle there. The Sisters of Sinai, two lady adventures discovered the hidden gospels. Okay, that's interesting. Birth of textual criticism. Richard Simon. Yeah, I've heard that before. Richard Simon sort of started that's Theodorletus. Richard Simon started the whole concept of, paleography, dating things, putting things into different categories and pitching them against themselves. And so I'm just sort of catching up on the Textus Receptus Academy. As you can see, there's so much stuff on here. I just, after a while, I don't have time to actually go through a lot of this stuff. A few more people saying stuff. John Gill's defense of 1 John 5:7. So you can see that there. I won't go there again because I also have to come back. Did no commentators or theologians before King James onlyism understand Psalm 12:7 as providential preservation? So yeah, that's an interesting thing to look at. I might even like that, so I can go back to that. How many of you read Greek beyond the basics, and what books are you reading now in Koine? It's a very good question. And when we had the confessional bibliology page, it's still running, but it's not as popular as it used to be. But we were, Chris Thomas, I think it is, who runs that. He was running the Greek in a year program, and so that was really good. So we had quite a lot of people jump in on that, and that had tests and everything, and it had a prize, and so quite a lot of people were involved in that. And I think in the end there was only like 2 who actually finished it, but it sort of guided us and pushed us to sort of really get into the Greek, which was good. Okay, so I think that's about it. Few other books thrown up there. Anyway, so that's the Textus Receptus Academy. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. So yeah, so I think I might just bail. God bless you guys. Unless you guys have anything else you want to say or chat about, I'm going to hit the road. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.